Hello, everyone. Welcome to this definitely different podcast episode. It has been a while. We had a little inner makeover with this podcast. And the first person with this inner makeover is Dr. Anthony Mattis. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So let me introduce you a little bit. So Anthony, you have been you have been a doctor for like 20 years. You're in chiropractor.
Chiropractic, yep.
Yeah, and we have been around because I've started seeing you or like noticing you when I was into exploring the tools of access consciousness, which you are a facilitator in worldwide, in like live classes and online classes. You're great with bodies and energy work and like really like basically like facilitate tools in like self-development. I've seen you around. I really love your work. And there's also something like really interesting about your story from where you are coming from that I would like to share with the people. So about like 9 years ago, you were married and your wife then killed herself, and you were left behind with 3 children, quite small. So you had quite a journey that you went there, and now you got remarried to also a very lovely lady, Julia Sodas, which I've been checking around and been inspired with as well. And and it looks like you're really happily married. So and your kids as well. Your kids are like doing like happy and thriving. So could you start maybe there? How was that for you, and how did you go from A to B, which is like, yeah.
It was more like A to Z, to be honest with you. But goodness, yeah, so, my first wife, the kid's mom, had committed suicide. And, being a chiropractor, especially what we call a holistic chiropractor, meaning that my approach to the body and healing was more of a holistic approach, in that instead of just looking at the body and why, the person had these particular symptoms, we were always after instead of just treating the symptoms, we wanted to look at the because. Okay, why is this person actualizing these particular conditions? Is it something because they're angry? Is it something because they're maybe frustrated with their marriage, or they're not happy with what they do for work? Or is it because they've had like some sort of physical accident? So I was always very interested in looking for the cause of why people's bodies weren't working optimally. But it was more than just the body. I wanted to know what was going on in people's lives, because that right there determined a lot the way the body would behave. And so I was always studying different techniques, different spiritual practices, different philosophies. I was into metaphysics, breath work, chakra healing. I mean, I can't even remember all the different things that I did. And so when I met my first wife, she was sort of interested in that sort of thing too. She was a yoga instructor and whatnot. And so we had a guru from India. We became non-denominational Christians. We spoke in tongues. We laid our hands and healed people out in the streets. And, so we were always going after something and seeking more than what this reality had presented itself to be, because, we wanted answers. So when she died, and she decided to take her life, I was actually shocked. Number one, I was shocked because she had gone 5.5 years with no medication. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when she was 17. Okay. And early in our marriage, about 3 years into our marriage, she had her second episode, but it was my first experience with it. I was like, what the hell? And it was almost like someone being demon possessed. But, the medical community is like, well, that's the nature of the illness. She's in a bipolar episode. And I'm like, yeah, but she's not the same person. She's like demon possessed, you know? And I know that sounds hokey, but I was like, she's not the same person. It's like, what, you know, I'm trying to figure out like what switch flipped inside her brain. Like, you know, now granted, her mom had committed suicide the year prior to her second episode, right? So we went through all that. That was my first experience. The kids at that time we had two at that time. They were 2.5 years old, and my youngest son was 18 months. So I grabbed the kids. I had complete custody of them while she was in the middle of her episode, kind of on a rampage, you know, so to speak. And then she healed from that. And we went 5.5 years with her being sane, stable, and sober. You know, she went through AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. She looked at that part of it, and with no medicines, 5.5 years. So when she got sick the last time, it really felt like it came out of nowhere. Like there was no stress in our life. Our marriage was better than it had ever been. My finances were better than it had ever been. I was no longer in any kind of financial debt. And literally when that last episode came on, it was like it came out of nowhere. We couldn't blame it on anything. She wasn't drinking. She wasn't drugging. Her mom didn't, nobody killed them. So, you know, like life was good. So when she took her life at that time, then we had a daughter during that time, and the kids were 10, 8, and 2.5. And I was literally on my knees, like, God, like, why, you know, like why with all this work that we've done, and how does someone go from normal to completely psychotic like that for no reason? And again, the medical community say, well, that's just the nature of bipolar disorder. That wasn't acceptable to me. You know what I mean? There's got to be a reason, right? I know we have brain chemicals, right? I know we have hormones and stuff like that, but something triggers them to change. Okay. Now, and so again, that made me search for more. But at that point, I was so fed up with techniques and modalities and the different philosophies and different religions, because I looked at all of them. And I remember sitting, it was about 6 months after she had passed away, and I'm like in that intense grieving phase. And I remember saying to myself, you know, for someone who has studied so many different healing therapies, so many different self-help modalities, I have nothing to show for it, like zero. I felt like I was like a starving healer, so to speak. I was a great healer, but I was nowhere near being prosperous, right? I was just getting by. And I'm like, this sucks. And so if you were to take that tragedy and like set it aside, I had to look at my life and I'm like, am I happy with what I've created so far? And I was like, no. I'm like, this is not acceptable. And I remember saying to myself, you know, and I was a kind of person, I was like a psychotherapist's dream come true. Because when I would go to counseling or therapy, I would say, here's the closet, here are all my skeletons, come on in and please help me, because I know there's something better available. And they loved me. They were like, you should be a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist. You're good at this stuff, you know? But nothing ever changed. And so, and I remember I kept asking like God or the universe, I'm like, there's got to be a modality that's sort of like, wherever I'm messed up, wherever I'm stuck, it's got to be way beyond the unconscious mind, as they would say. And I'm like, if there's a technique out there that can get to that place and unlock that thing that is way beyond my cognitive understanding, please bring it to me, because I'm lost. And then like 9 months after she passed, this thing called the bars of access consciousness showed up. And I was very, very, very curious, but very reluctant, because like I said, I had invested so much money in so many different things with no results. So.
Very recognizable. Not the exact story, but yeah.
Yeah, when access came, it was like this weird, wild, wacky set of tools. And I was like, I don't know. And the thing that really piqued my interest was when Dr. Dane here, the co-creator of Access Consciousness, he shares this story about when he was suicidal, and how when after his first bar session, he was like, well, during his first bar session, he was like giggling and laughing. And so, like, what is the bars for the people who have not even heard of it? And it's not an acronym for anything, but it does deal with these 32 points on your head that carry like these electric magnetic components of like all your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, considerations, emotions about healing, sadness, joy, your body, sex, you name it. And so you just place your hands on the person's head and you hold them there for a certain amount of time. And what it does is it actually begins to dissolve those limitations, even in areas where you don't even know that you're limited. And so, again, being in the hands-on healing profession, that made me very curious. So I wanted to look at that. And then, and he was also a chiropractor. So that right there, I was like very, very curious, but I was literally like this the whole time. I'm like, here we go again, another technique. I don't know. But I went, and really what had happened was the boys were at that time 11 and 9. I put them in the car and I went to my first bars class, and I watched the ease that it created in both my sons. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm a lost cause, but I'll come back because of what the ease that it's creating in their world. Because I don't want this mental illness to get passed down to the children. If there's a way to break this genetic tendency, so to speak, and if this is the thing that will do it, I'm going to do it for the kids. I'm a lost cause. And so, and then it was weird. It was like after like my third bars class, rocked my world. And that's when I knew that there was something really, really powerful about this work, and I needed to keep going to see where it would take me. And here I am. It's like I literally closed my chiropractic practice down because of the results that I've personally experienced, my children have experienced. And I can't even begin to tell you, like, put it this way, everything that I've ever desired in life is showing up with ease. And I feel really blessed and grateful. And I have no doubt in my mind that if someone is struggling, whether you've been abused physically, mentally, verbally, the title of this particular, podcast is like your past doesn't have to dictate your future. And that's true. People would show up at my office expecting me to be this like grieving widower, suffering, struggling. I was happy. I got really happy. I got happier than I had ever been in my life. And people were like shocked, like they expected me to be stuck, struggling, So, and I wasn't.
I love that. And can I even actually add where you said that all the things that you desired came true?
Yeah.
I would like to say, like, for me, it was like a lot of the stuff that I didn't even particularly desire, because there was like a lot of not possible stuff in my world. Like it wouldn't even come across my mind, because like I blocked it all out. That because I've been playing with this for the last 5 years as well, and like I'm doing stuff that I've never even dared dreaming of.
It's awesome. And it's, oh God, just so many places. I'll tell you, it's the most put it this way, with all the other techniques I'd done before, I always went to like the highest level, right? Whatever that is. And nothing. I mean, nothing. They were great techniques. I could have had a great conversation over a cup of coffee. But these tools and access, boy, whew. It was like, I'm like, oh my God. There were times where I felt really uncomfortable in the sense that it's sort of like, it's like strips away that armor that we have created throughout our lives to like protect ourselves from being abused or being hurt by other people, or from trying to control not being at the effect of other people. ever again, right? So we build this cocoon around ourselves, which keeps us from like really receiving and creating our lives. And Access has this amazing way of sort of like stripping that down to where you're like this like open wound in this like space of vulnerability. And there were moments where I'm like, wow, no other modality made me so uncomfortable. But because I had done all those other things, I knew that because I was so uncomfortable, that something was changing, something was happening. And as a result of being sort of stripped down, so to speak, and being in that space of vulnerability, it actually gave me access to more of me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Because when you're like comfortable in your life, isn't that like often the place where you do things the same? Or you do things the same thing, and when you start to feel uncomfortable, it's like, have you entered a new crossroad, or have you entered a new road where new stuff can come in? Is that like, how can so to come back like with the title, if your past no longer dictates your future, and then you're talking about like, which is already like a tool on its own, I think, willing to be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
being in front of a new door, like, will I open that new door? Will I close it? Because when I close it, it's comfortable. But then again, when you're not opening it, things will stay the same. So what practical tool could you give for anybody who is like watching, who will be listening in the future, to start with that? When you're like coming to a crossroad, like a new door, it's getting uncomfortable. What do you do? How did you go with that?
Well, for it be like, okay, this gosh, is so much. So the first thing, really, what helped me, because again, I was really skeptical in the beginning, and I really resisted a lot of like the verbal facilitation that was available. And so, but again, being a hands-on practitioner, like, and really curious about hands-on healing modalities, the bars was something that I was very curious about, and I was willing to receive at that time. So I made a commitment to receiving bars sessions as often as I possibly could. So I became a facilitator right away, and I started to train people on how to do it, especially my children, because there was nobody in my town. So I made sure I started to receive the bars on a regular basis, at least 2 to 3 times a week for a while. And then eventually we built up a little group of us, like there were like 10 to 13 of us just in my town, and we would just trade with each other on a regular basis. But the level of ease that receiving the bars, gifting and receiving the bars created in my universe was like, whoa. And I literally would feel, just the bars alone, I would literally feel like whatever remember when I talked about like those unconscious limitations, those areas where I knew I was stuck, but I didn't know how to quite access them. I could start to feel them go just from the bars. I started to feel them, and I'm like, oh my God, whatever that weird thing is that kept me from like getting out in the world and creating my life in the way that I always knew was possible, for whatever reason I couldn't quite get there or choose it, the space was starting to get created. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then you're like, and that's where like the discomfort comes in, because you're like, now you have space, right? We're so used to having our problems everywhere we look. And then all of a sudden you're literally like in the sea of infinite possibilities. It wasn't just one new doorway, Evie. It was like being out in the sea of infinite possibilities. And it's like, oh my God, you mean I have all this choice? Whoa, and then it's a matter of, okay, even if I feel like I'm gonna die, I'm still gonna jump off that cliff anyway, because it's a hell of a lot better than sitting on the fence and not choosing or being.
And I must say, sitting on the fence actually feels like dying.
Totally, exactly. And that's exactly what and again, it's like people were like, oh my God, he went through such a tragedy and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that was a piece of it. But like, I had felt stuck since I was 5 years old. I felt like everything was against me since I was 5 till I was 41 years old, or really 43. I started Access at 41. So, and again, and it took about 3 years of doing Access, or 2.5 years of doing Access, before I actually realized that the work is, will it get you through your pain and suffering? Absolutely. But it's way more than that. It's, the work is actually, the tools can actually contribute to you and helping you to create the life that you actually desire, whatever that is. And so there's actually, like, I don't want to use the word magic, but for lack of better words, it's like actually quite magical and beautiful. I don't know how else to explain it. Even the word magic is a limitation of that. But so it was more, I'm like, wow, this is more than just getting me through the dramas and traumas and my pain and suffering. Like, I could actually have fun and joy and create whatever it is that I want. And I always knew that from all the other modalities. I always knew it, but I couldn't get there. I couldn't actualize it. No matter what I did, it was like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So the bars, number one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Number two, I just get excited because, because of what it's created for me. My family, The second thing was, one of the tools that we use, and this is where some of the verbal tools come into play, is to ask yourself this question: if you had 10 seconds to live the rest of your life, what would you choose? And that, I love that tool, because I'll tell you what, I never said I'm going to choose pain and suffering. I never said, oh, I'm going to choose to be sad about what the children's mother chose. I never said that to myself. I was like, okay, I got 10 seconds to live the rest of my life. What do I choose? And I'm like, wow, I'm going to make this moment matter. Whoever's with me, I'm going to grab them and love on them, even if they're a stranger. And that's how I started living my life. I started living my life in 10-second increments. And what that actually created for me was, it got me out of dwelling on my story. It got me out of dwelling on the past and all the things that had happened to me. And it also kept me from worrying about the future. So it kept me in the now moment. And every choice you make in the now creates your future.
Yeah.
So I started making different choices, no matter how uncomfortable I was. Even if I didn't believe in myself, I started making different choices.
Can I stop you there for a moment?
Mm-hmm.
So first off, this 10 seconds, I'm gonna give a link to all the listeners here and people that are looking at this. It's from a book, 10 Keys to Total Freedom. Mm. And I would like to have when you say so I'm not maybe saying it exactly how you said it, but it was like, every choice you make today creates your future.
Yep.
Now that's a really cool one. Can you extrapolate a little bit more on that one? Like, what do you mean every choice you make today creates your future?
Well, so I'm gonna try not to be esoteric about it, but it's sort of like, like when you throw a rock into the lake, right? Here's the one rock, that's the choice. You throw it into the lake, and then it creates this ripple effect that goes out and out and out and out and out and out. And so look at where your life is right now. Your life is where it is because of the choices you made 5, 10, 15 years ago. So unless you start to make different choices, your life is going to look like the same as it does now, maybe with a different covering on it, but it's going to be the same life. The fence that you're sitting on is just going to be a lot older, and you'll be getting more splinters. So it's like, man, if I really want to create a different life 3 years from now, 5 years from now, I have to start making different choices and snap out of that, whatever patterns that I continuously find myself in. So a lot of times before I would make a choice, I would always reference the past. I would always reference like mistakes that I made, right? Because I made so much judgment of the bad choices I made. No, every choice you make creates an awareness. There are no bad choices. There's just choices, right? And every choice you made created awarenesses in your universe, right? So you can either choose to make a different choice moving forward or make the same choice if that worked for you, right?
Yeah, I
So
love that.
again, that one choice creates this ripple effect, and all these events happen and rearrange themselves just because of that one choice. And so, and it's like, here we are 8 years later. Ugh, I can't even begin to tell you how different my life is. And I'm still a work in progress. Have I arrived anywhere? Absolutely not. But my life is different than it would have been had I not made certain choices along the way. And so it's just one choice can create this huge ripple effect that goes 10, 15, 20, 30 years, 100 years out into the future. What do you mean by 100 years? Well, look at certain things that people throughout history, what they've chosen, right?
Yeah.
Great artists and stuff like that throughout time and history. The choices that they made are impacting us, and they lived 600 years ago, 700 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Fuck, I love that example.
yeah,
Because it's so true.
yeah. And you just have to trust. One of the things was like, I was so beaten down anyway. I was kind of like, well, if it works, awesome. If it doesn't work, well, just another modality that I spent a lot of money on that didn't work. Oh, well. But at least I was like, I'm not going to if I die, I die, but I'm going to die at least going for it, and, but this was the one modality that actually worked. It actually worked. It changed whatever pattern I was stuck in. And again, it wasn't just about the suicide of the children's mom. It was also an honest look at my whole entire life. And I'm like,
yeah,
what the fuck? I mean, literally, I was like, what the fuck? For someone who had divulged themselves to therapists and stuff like that, who read the only books I had ever read were self-help books. I had nothing to show for it. Zero. So what would you like to choose today that will create a different future right away?
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you got me speechless and wondering. I think this might be like a good time to leave. No, not leave. To finish. It's a nice mic drop moment. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. And like whoever's listening, and if you're sitting there, be like, yeah, but he doesn't know what I've been through.
Yeah.
My problems are way worse than his. You know what? And maybe so. But you know what? My problems are way worse than a lot of other people. And I'm happier than I've ever been in my entire life. And that is available for you too. That is available for you too. So it's like, your past does not have to dictate the next 5 years of your life, but you have to be willing to choose something different. And if you feel like you can't quite do it because something's like keeping you stuck internally, and no matter what you do to try to deal with that and you can't change it, look at the tools of access consciousness, because they'll change things that haven't been working for you. That I can promise you. When? I don't know, but they will eventually if you're willing to receive it.
And I would, there's a few things that I would like to add, like even if it's like with the tools of access or with something else, like one of the things that's like the most important key part is like starting to make different choices, which I totally get. Like I'm experiencing it since the last 5 years, that access, the tools of that makes it so much easier and faster to choose different choices, because this that's where using the word again, the magic is.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to state, like when you said maybe listening, the people that are listening that thinking like, yeah, but what about my problem? Like I come from I started to learn these tools when I was in a very highly abusive relationship. And I come I come from a past of parents that were like high drug abusers. I didn't grow up very happy and easy. I was like, it was like the hard knock life, but then like, you know, the Belgian Flemish version. Um, and like having that said, and looking at where I am today, totally upgraded my past. So we all have our differences in like the stuff that we endure in this life. And I think for every background, for every person with their own personal problems, it definitely is possible.
Yeah. Yep. Not just for the select few, but for everyone.
Yeah, because I thought for a long time, like I like literally told people I'm fucked up goods. Be careful.
Yeah.
This
And
get better than this.
you know, and there's a Gaslight Summit that just occurred too, which I think people can go onto Facebook and join the Gaslight Summit group. I don't know what the link is, but just type in Gaslight Summit, and there were a lot of amazing speakers, and you know, they talk about this whole gaslighting thing that occurs, you know, which is actually even in the psychological books as a particular thing that people go through, which is a form of abuse. But you know, you may want to look at where you may be in different relationships, whether it's at your workplace or in a loving relationship or from your parents, you know, whether or not you're being gaslit, which is just sort of like a slow way of the slow, insidious way of just being abused and by the people who supposedly care about you. And before you know it, you don't even know who the hell you are anymore because you're so caught up in their universe. You know, so check that stuff out too, because that's just another way for, you know, people who have been abused in all variety of ways to sort of start climbing out of that and choosing something different for themselves.
Yeah, I love that. I'll add the link to that as well. And so if people want to find out more about you, Anthony, where can they go?
Yeah, they could just check out my website at you know, dr for DrAnthonyMattis.com, DrAnthonyMattis.com, and they can look at the different classes I'm having, you know, around the world and online mainly now because of the whole COVID-19 thing. But yeah, but so many of these tools could be done online, and we're obviously doing a lot of classes online as well. So yeah, if it's something that's light or you're curious about it, come play.
I'll add the link to that as well. And I do know you have a Facebook group as well.
Yeah, I have a couple of Dr. Anthony Mattis, CFMW, and Anthony Mattis. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's your Facebook page, hey? And then you also have like a Facebook group where people can like play in.
Yeah, creating your future.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah, I got so many different things I forget.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It was a lot of fun.
If there are like any questions in the future, you can definitely like post them like here on this live, or contact any of us. I will be happy to attend to it, and I'm pretty sure Dr. Anthony will be as well.
All right.
Well, this is it.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah, what else is possible with your future? So this is it. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.